Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Baseball America Hot Sheet show. We are excited to be here. The draft is right around the corner. You can see the bags under my eyes, maybe not on Carlos and Ben. You can see the sun that Ben has because Ben was out there and I think it was 130, felt like 130 degrees, seeing the next best draft prospects for 26, 27 and beyond, almost melting out there. And you can see Carlos, who basically has a keyboard attached to his fingers right now because we have to update 500 scouting reports. But we're glad to have you here. We're going to dive into the upcoming 2025 MLB draft right around the corner now, and we'll do that on First Move. So there we have it. We have a new mock draft out today. We also have updated, we'll get to them, but we have updated our rankings recently. But Carlos, I'll start by asking the question. You can ask your questions here, we'll try to answer them, but I'll ask the question that everyone's going to ask who hasn't checked it out already. So who you got going number one to the Nationals?
Yeah, new name at the top for the Nationals for the first time in our fifth iteration of this mock draft. We have Cade Anderson, the left-handed pitcher at LSU, in the top spot today. I wouldn't say this is any indication of like increased confidence that I think this is more likely to be the pick than Ethan Holiday. I think Ethan Holiday and Cade Anderson have been the favorites the last few weeks or so as I've been hunting around the league, talking to sources, trying to figure out what's happening. The Nationals are keeping things pretty quiet, as they probably should at this point. It really depends on who you talk to as to which player seems more likely. We've had Ethan Holiday in the top spot for a few times now. Cade Anderson finished hot down the stretch. He's the, I would say, near consensus top college arm in the class. That feels pretty safe to say now. And it feels almost like a coin flip as to whether Cade Anderson or Ethan Holiday are going to be the first players off the board here. But we went with Cade Anderson this time. And then it's kind of interesting how the ripple effects happen throughout the first 10 picks on lots of college pitcher versus high school shortstop decisions that I think the Nationals are going to have. And I think a lot of teams throughout the first 10 picks will have. So that's where we're at right now. I still don't have a ton of confidence which way we're going, but it does feel like Anderson and Holiday are the favorites.
One other nugget to me that jumped out at the top of the mock draft when you were pointing this out, because a lot of times we talk about it right now and teams are playing it close to the vest. And part of the reason they are at 1-1 is to crack the best deal. But Carlos, one of the things that jumps out with this is not going to be as easy necessarily to play one guy off and say, oh, well, we've got an offer out here to someone else who could be really jumping at that, because there is a little something to do with the representation of one Cade Anderson and Ethan Holiday, isn't there?
Yeah, they're both represented by Scott Boras this year. I think Boras in general has a really strong class. He's got a number of players who are going to go not only in the first round, but very high in the first round. And so if you were trying to leverage one player off another, it doesn't really work well when the same agency is handling those negotiations. So I maybe would say that I would expect that Ethan Holiday is going to get the biggest bonus in this draft. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come with the first overall pick. But yeah, that is definitely a factor. If the Nationals maybe did have Anderson and Ethan Holiday as their clear top two and wanted to leverage them against one another, it's going to be a lot trickier to do that. And I would just say it's not going to happen this year for those two. So that is maybe an interesting wrinkle to just keep in mind as we get closer.
So Ben, as Carlos mentioned, we have a situation here where the top of the draft could be very high school shortstop heavy, could be very college starting pitcher heavy, or maybe some blend of both. But it does really feel like, depending on how these first couple of picks line up, we could really talk about this being the year of the high school shortstop or the year of the college starter, isn't it?
Yeah, you'd really, I think a lot of teams would really like to have that college bat who can get to the big leagues quickly, who you have a 2 or 3 year track record on. A guy like Dylan Cruz or Wyatt Langford, or obviously Cam Smith went a little bit later in the draft, but that kind of trajectory, right? Nick Kurtz, those type of guys, and they're just not really in the draft this year. Maybe really like Iva Arquette, but I don't think he belongs in that class. So I think, yeah, you will see some college hitters go in the top 10 picks, but we really don't have those elite college bats this year that you normally do. So yeah, I think you're right. It's going to be high school infielders and those college arms, whether, Kate Anderson, Liam Doyle, Jamie Arnold going very early this year.
And Carlos, kind of the thing with that also jumps out with that is that this really could be the year of the college left-hander. There have only been two college left-handers. You have Kate Anderson going right now 1-1. Only two college lefties have ever gone 1-1, which is David Price and Floyd Bannister. But this is a year where we could turn around and it's like, wow, it's college lefty after college lefty.
Yeah, I think there's a real scenario where we see college left-handers, 3 of them drafted in the first 5 picks. Kate Anderson, obviously, who we mentioned, Liam Doyle, the left-hander at Tennessee, and then Jamie Arnold, the left-hander at FSU. All of these players are very much in play with the first 3, 4, 5 teams on the board. And there are scenarios where they could go one after another. And it's a very pitcher heavy draft, like you're talking about. If proximity and getting players to the major leagues is the goal with teams picking at the top this year, like Ben said, there are no college hitting options. I think Iva Arquette is really the only college hitter that I would say is a lock to go inside the first 10 picks. There are a couple other names who could slip into the back of the top 10, and maybe there's some underslot options who would go on a deal in that range. But beyond him, there's no college hitter that's a slam dunk, definite top 10 pick. And so if you do want those reinforcements, you're going to follow this recent wave over the last 2 or 3 years of really pushing draft players aggressively. It's much more likely to come from the college pitcher demographic than the college hitter. Iva Arquette is much more of a like toolsy, upside, athletic sort of position player profile that might just need a little bit more seasoning, a little more hit tool polish in the minor leagues.
But kind of along those lines, we also talked about that this could be the year of the prep shortstop. Carlos, how many prep high school shortstops could we see go in the top 10 if everything fell right?
Yeah, I think there's a very likely scenario where we have 4 high school shortstops go inside the top 10. That would be Ethan Holiday, Eli Willits, both Oklahoma prepsters, Billy Carlson out in California, and then JoJo Parker in the Southeast. I think those players all are very likely to go in that range. Parker and Carlson maybe slip to like the top 12 or so. And then there's even like a non-zero chance that someone like Steele Hall sneaks into the very back of the top 10, depending on what happens in front. If teams picking at 9 or 10 maybe don't have their top options, I've heard there's some interest in him in that 9 to 11 range. So we're looking at a lot of high school shortstops. We're looking at a lot of college arms in the top 10. I think the shortstop capital in this year's class has a chance to be historic in the first round. The last few years, we've seen a lot more shortstops going inside the first round. We wrote about what the reasons for that might be in our draft preview issue, which is out. I don't know exactly when it comes out on stands, but it was fun to kind of explore the rationale for that. And this year's class, whether it's cyclical, whether it's just different bodies being able to play the position at the major league level, we have a lot of shortstops. I think there's a real chance that we could have 11 plus shortstops in the first 30 picks this year, which would be a draft record. But again, half of the first 10 picks could be high school shortstops. And I think on talent, that would make a lot of sense. These wouldn't be like huge reaches to get them in there.
We already getting some good questions. We're going to get to those, we promise you, right after this quick break.
All right, Harry's is going to get an award here, MVP in the shaving world. And AJ, if you want to equate it to things that we talk about, it's not expensive. And it's super versatile, right? The company itself, because there's other products that you can get on the site, deodorant, body wash, etc. But for your everyday shaving needs, Harry's has you covered. And you look at the pricing, you look at the quality, and you're like, wait, why was I using the old classic brand for a long time?
Listen, as somebody right now that needs a Harry's, I've just been lazy. Harry's, I have plenty of them lined up, ready to use. You can use them for more than one shave, which is huge for me. And the pricing is right. I got to go get my Harry's because my neck beard is sick. But Harry's will fix that. It'll line me up straight. It'll no bumps, no cuts. It's exactly what I need for a great price.
That's right. Get the edge on your shave with Harry's. Normally their trial set is $10, but right now you can get it for just $6 at harrys.com/foul. That's our exclusive link, harrys.com/foul, for a $6 trial set.
And we're back. So we've got a trio of questions we're going to dive into here. I'll take the first one on Rylan Zabrowski, which is, does Rylan Zabrowski warrant a pick inside the top 3 rounds? Age seems to be the reason he's not a first-round guy. I would say that I would go beyond that. We've written up Rylan Zabrowski. I wrote him up, or at least finalized the update of the report this past weekend. He's in our 500, but age and lack of positional, some positional questions, and the fact that kind of he took a big step forward in this grad student year at Georgia, kind of all factor into him being more of a senior sign type than someone who would be a top of the draft guy. So I think you'll expect to hear his name called, but I would not expect to hear his name called that quickly, even though he did have a very good year at Georgia this year. But next up, we've got Hunter Johnson asking, what are y'all hearing on the chances Jack Bauer or Landon Harmon make it to school? Carlos, Jack Bauer, one of the most fascinating players in this class, throws 100 plus from the left side. And yes, he does wear number 24, as he should, being Jack Bauer.
Yeah, these are both high school pitchers who I would say are right on the fringe of the range where I could easily see them picked in the second or third round and given overpays a la Bubba Chandler. He got a lot of money in the third round. Brock Porter was a high school pitcher who was taken in the fourth round who got a lot of money. So a lot of that will just depend on what happens in front, who's saving up money for high school pitchers, and what the signability number that both these guys are going to put out. I would imagine, given their college commits, just given their talent in general, they're going to have pretty high price tags. I think there are teams who are interested in trying to sign both these guys out of school in the draft. But it's going to be more of a question that teams are probably going to have a better answer for a few days before the draft, when more of these hard and fast signability conversations start to come into play. It's hard to really ballpark it now with any sort of specificity. I'll just say like they both fit in this Cam Johnson, Will Schmidt, trying to think of some other high profile guys who've gone in this range, like these types of players who are not locked in, no doubt first rounders for various reasons, but could easily get overpaid after. So it's nearly like 50-50 to me. It wouldn't surprise me either way. It's ultimately just going to come down to the signability, what the ask is on the money front.
And Ben, that's something that's really kind of changed, I think, pretty dramatically over the last 5 years, because if we were talking about these players, 8-9 years ago, we'd be talking about them from the standpoint of, well, it's their asking price and they're hoping to go to school and then raise their number by having a really strong college career. Now it can be a little bit more of, when you get NIL and all that, the financial question's a little different now than it was before, isn't it?
Yeah, in the draft, you can negotiate with, once you get picked, especially one team, right? Okay, but now you're also negotiating with the school that you're committed to go to, which can offer you an NIL package. If you're going to the first round, you're signing, right? Like that's pretty much no school is going to offer comparable money to what you're going to get in the first round. But beyond that, the teams that have significant NIL money to throw around can get guys to come to school. I mean, Chris Lavonis was another example of a pitcher who's probably on par with what Jack Bauer and Landon Harmon are right now. He got to school at Wake Forest. Tyler Bell, a shortstop position player, went to Kentucky, played as a freshman this year, had a tremendous year. There are teams that are throwing around a lot of NIL money at these players, where the players have to make a calculation or a decision and say, okay, yeah, maybe I'm getting a big offer of a signing bonus right now at a high school, but I can get maybe not equivalent to it, but close to it, and spread out over multiple years of NIL money, and then get another chance at a signing bonus out of college as well, and probably not be too far behind, especially if you're a premium guy, seeing how quickly some of these guys are getting to the major leagues right now. So yeah, there's some more competition among that major league teams have now, not just among the other 29 MLB teams, but the colleges too, that are making a pretty hard push to be able to pay these guys too.
Along those lines, we have had three players, Baseball America's reporting, we have three players who have officially withdrawn from the draft, which means they are not eligible to be selected. We had catcher outfielder Brady Dallimore, who was 194 on our top 500. Ben Davis, the Mississippi State right-hander. When we get back to that, put a pin in that for a minute. And then Omar Cerna, who's headed to LSU. All three of those players are officially withdrawn from the draft. I want to go back to Davis for a second, kind of tied into what we were just talking about there. Carlos, like normally I don't remember college guys being ones who pulled themselves out of the draft, but nowadays the dynamic, as we just talked about, has changed a little bit. Is there also other guys who on the college side who kind of may fit into that NIL back and forth of whether maybe it's better to go back to school as opposed to, especially if you're sliding in the draft?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ben Davis was the lowest ranked player we had of this trio. Omar Cerner was a top 100 prospect, and he definitely fits more of that bucket of like typical withdrawal types. The high school catchers can be a sketchy demographic for teams, and with the LSU commit, that one is much more in line with what we've seen in the past. But Ben Davis is a junior at Mississippi State. It is very in the pre-NIL world, it would be very uncommon for a college junior to go back to school without even trying out the draft, just because you have such little leverage when you're a college senior. But now, if you've kind of assessed where your stock is in the draft, you don't think you're going to be a super high round pick. The range we had him would have been like 11 to 15 round range on talent. Colleges are going to be able to compete with those slot values, those expected bonuses. I think a year ago, you look at a player like Jared Jones, who returned to LSU. I would have to imagine that he was getting a pretty decent package to LSU, and it paid off for him. And he was able to, like you said, just get another shot at it. I think it's going to work out well for Jared Jones this year in the draft. So the teams who are investing in college baseball are putting a lot more resources behind these players. And you also have the fact that the draft is now 20 rounds. So there are a lot fewer opportunities. There's a lot more competition. There are fewer spots in the actual minor leagues, which maybe pushes more of these high school players out of the draft typically. But yeah, like Ben was saying, like you were mentioning, it's just a lot more competition. There are more paths to financial incentives than 5-10 years ago.
I would also just note with that, like that you just said, like when you get to that point in the draft, we are talking about, we're not just in six figures, but you get to day 3 and you're often talking it's six figures and that first figure is a 1. So that's where NIL packages, $125, $150, even $175,000. The difference between that and being able to get your degree and get some money in addition to full ride at this point with everything, it has become a much different discussion than we had before. We did have another question I know out there from, I believe, Pipeline Talk wanted to know if the Nationals go heavily under slot first overall, is Seth Hernandez or Eli Willits more likely? Carlos, I would just say, starting with, I don't think that those are the two guys I think of when I think of the words heavily under slot. But what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that both of them could be decent underslot deals. Heavily underslot is odd now because the slots at the very top are so high. I mean, Travis Bazzana was $1 million underslot last year as a pretty, like we had him ranked as the number 2 prospect in the class. So the fact that you can save $1 million on a player that we think on talent absolutely fits 1-1, I think is a pretty decent chunk of change. So I maybe would push back and say I do think those could be reasonable underslot savings with a slot value that I think is $11.5 million. I'll double check that just now, but okay, not 11.5, but just over $11 million is slot value, and our draft bonus record is 9.25 million. So if there is going to be an underslot situation, I think there could be a lot of savings here for the Nationals. It's hard for me to say which one of those two is more likely. I maybe would lean a bit towards Seth Hernandez just because he has a little bit more upside. But at the same time, I think you could equally push back at me and say, we've never seen a high school right-handed pitcher drafted 1-1. That's too risky. I do keep coming back to the fact that I think Mike Rizzo and the Nationals would be more willing to take on that sort of risk, that sort of profile at the very top of a muddled class compared to some other teams. If this was maybe the Orioles picking 1-1, Seth would obviously not be the guy that I think is most likely. But it's funny because we do have some people who previously worked in the scouting department of the Orioles now working with the Nationals, how much their philosophy has changed. And some of these decisions might have more of a factor. But I still think both of these players are in the conversation in some capacity. I wouldn't put either of them as favorites right now, though. So that's a long way of saying I'm not entirely sure.
But Ben, what do you think?
I think if there's a GM who's going to take a high school pitcher 1-1, Mike Rizzo is one of them. So I would not be surprised if Seth Hernandez does go 1-1, but I don't know if you're going to get a huge discount on Seth Hernandez. On the other hand, I think Eli Willits checks a lot of boxes that teams look for that a lot of different evaluators look for, I should say. I mean, switch hitting, shortstop, athletic, bloodlines, dad played in the major leagues, really, really outstanding baseball instincts, high baseball IQ, good internal clock at shortstop, good track record of hitting. He's young for the class, as a reclass from the 2026 class. So I would lean more toward Eli Willits than Seth Hernandez as a kind of a sleeper to go 1-1.
But, well, so we're going to get a little bit more into this, but we'll do that right after this quick break.
Hey, this episode is sponsored by Huel, so I'm going to take a sip while Todd Father tells you about Huel. And Todd Father, you asked me, when should I drink it?
Yeah,
what did I tell you?
Really, it's the best thing for you. Before a workout, after a workout, whatever you're feeling. Like sometimes I'll just drink this just because it tastes that good. The flavor is very good. It's going to make you feel, it's going to fill you up too. Good protein, and it's very appetizing. So for you people out there who are starting to work out or have been, drink this. You're going to feel very much energized and very much full, which is a great thing.
Yeah, people that are having problems, not having enough time to eat their meals, Huel for you. Or a little post-workout protein punch, Huel for you. Start saving time and money without compromising your nutrition today with the FT offer for new customers. 15% off using the code FAL at Huel.com. 15% for new customers using FOUL at Huel.com. See our description for the terms and conditions. Skip the stress, not the nutrition. Try Huel today for complete nutrition.
So we're back, and I just want to use this time to clear this up, because we get this so often. When someone hears under slot for the Nationals at 1, they're trying to cut a deal. Let us make clear, there's no part of this that's like, the Nationals are cheap. The Nationals aren't willing to spend the money. Carlos, could you explain a little bit more, like the logic and what under slot for not just 1, but 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at this can mean in this draft?
Right. Yeah. So everyone really spends their entire bonus pool for the most part. It's mostly just like strategically, how are you going to assign that money throughout your draft class? Are you going to be really top heavy, or are you going to spread your money around? Most of the teams are using the full 100% or more of their bonus pool. I think this conversation is fascinating because in the mock draft today, we had Seth Hernandez going 6 to the Pirates. If you look at the slot value for the 6th overall pick, it's just over $7.5 million. If Seth Hernandez's camp is in a place where they think their realistic range of outcomes is somewhere in the 6 to 9 range, 9 being the Reds, who have 6.5 million, the slot values you're looking at there are quite a bit off the 1-1 overall slot of 11 million. So if you're Seth Hernandez and you're saying, okay, probably likely to go 6 to 9, maybe we get a little over slot, but it's not going to be significantly more. What if you're taking $9 million from the Nationals? That's almost $2 million more than slot value for 6, $1.5 million more than 6 overall slot value. And for the Nationals, that's $2 million in savings. So an underslot deal for Seth Hernandez or someone who's expecting to go in that range 1-1 could still make a lot of sense, because you're getting more than $1 million than you otherwise might be getting further down the board. So that's kind of how the logistics and the rationale works from the player side. If the Nationals think that Seth Hernandez is in the conversation for a top player in the class, which we here at Baseball America do think, we have him second on our board. I think he's got the most upside in the overall class. I think that can make a ton of sense, and that's kind of how the math works. But we've got all the slot values and bonus pools if you guys want to just take a scroll through and see how these numbers can change.
We've got a lot of great questions today. We appreciate that. And so we want to also kind of take this I'm Zeke 2001 question. Do y'all think that Quentin Young makes it to campus for LSU? I know both of you guys have seen Quentin Young. I know, Carlos, I think you were seeing him at the draft combine just a couple of weeks ago, if I remember correctly. But what's your sense, Carlos, on Quentin Young?
Well, we had him mocked to the Dodgers at 41. So if I thought that he was really strongly not going to make it to campus, he probably wouldn't have been there. Again, if he slides a little bit further than that, maybe there's a chance he gets to campus, but I would expect him to get drafted and signed. I think there are going to be enough teams who are like the Dodgers, who are really excited about the athleticism and the upside, and feel like they can do a good job in the hitting development for Young, because he's massively tooled up. He's got a ton of power upside, and I think he's going to go in a spot where he's going to sign and probably not make it to campus. That's my hunch at this point.
So we've talked a lot about the top of the class, but go down a little further in the first round, and this gets really interesting as well, because, while there's plenty of debate over, okay, we talked about the high school shortstops. What's the best high school shortstop in the class? What's the best college pitcher in the class? Get a little further down into that first round, and very easily you could see teams who are looking kind of at the exact same position group, demographic, who have very different opinions. Like Carlos, the catchers, the college catchers. We think Ike Irish is going to go off the board first. It's really hard to predict who's going to be the second catcher off the board, isn't it, from the college side?
Yeah, it is. And I think the two profiles that both Luke Stevenson, the North Carolina catcher, and Caden Bodine at Coastal Carolina, the profiles they have are so different and so polarizing. It's funny to think through, or it's interesting to think through the teams that are really on these. You'll talk to a team that thinks Luke Stevenson fits in the middle of the first round and Caden Bodine is a second or third rounder. And then you'll talk to another scout who thinks basically the opposite. Maybe the most interesting team to point to in discussing these players is the Brewers, because I've heard the Brewers connected to both of these catchers, which is just kind of interesting because typically the teams and scouts highest on one are a little more pessimistic of another, because Bodine is this contact king who maybe has the best pure hit tool in the college class and is a great receiver but lacks power. And Luke Stevenson has a lot of power from the left side, has a good approach at the plate, but also has a lot more hit tool risk than I think some teams would be comfortable with in the first round. So those polarizing profiles, trying to figure out who's going first, who's going to be the high man on them, has been interesting. And I think there's a scenario where they go a lot further apart than I maybe would think on talent, or where they could go kind of right next to each other for teams who value them for significantly different reasons.
So along those lines, we have the top prep shortstops at the top of the class that we talked about. And Danny Kirkland, I see your question that Jojo Parker, he fits in that top 10 group. So like he's part of that group. But then you get past that and then you get to, there are other interesting debates that could go on in the first round. So like, how do you see Kason Cunningham and Daniel Pierce as kind of a matchup, and who do you like?
The industry consensus probably has them pretty close. For me, I'd pretty easily take Kason Cunningham. I'm just a big Kason Cunningham fan. He's not that big. He's maybe 5'8", but he has a really, really good left-handed swing. It's compact, it's a tight turn of the barrel. It's adjustable. He makes contact on any type of pitch you throw at him, any part of the strike zone, consistently barreling balls. And then he's pretty good defensively too. I know there's some question about is it shortstop or second base. It's definitely middle infield. I think his defense gets a little bit underrated. Sometimes smaller guys just get underrated defensively for whatever reason, but I think the hands and feet work well at shortstop. He's a good internal clock, but really the calling card with him is the bat. It's one of the best pure hitters in the high school class this year at any position. I mean, he doesn't have Ethan Holiday's raw power or anything like that, but he has some of the best back control in the class. I think he's going to make a ton of contact and be a really, really good hitter.
Carlos, what's your vote or your opinion?
I mean, I would probably be in Ben's camp as well. I think Cunningham is the best pure hitter in the class. There are not a ton of 60 hits you can put on any player in this class, high school or college, and I think Cunningham has one of those. I will echo his comments about the fact that he might slide a little bit further, which is almost surprising to me, because I feel like these shorter pure hitters who maybe don't have the most explosive secondary tools do tend to slide in the draft because of those questions. They're very hit dependent, but a lot of the players who just have this track record as best pure hitters in the class, Kevin McGonigal is maybe the easiest guy to point to. If you redrafted those players in hindsight, they're almost always going earlier. So I would almost assume that teams are getting less critical of just like the shorter high school hitters. But then Daniel Pierce, I think for the opposite reasons, is maybe a polarizing prospect or one that different teams could value much differently. He is a much better athlete than Cunningham. I think he's much more likely to stick at shortstop and be a plus defender there. He's got an easy plus arm. The actions just look phenomenal. I think you could make a case that he's one of the better defensive shortstops in the class. He's really not as far off Merrick Houston and Billy Carlson as you might think, just given how people talk about those two shortstops defensively. The bigger questions with Daniel Pierce are, for a long time as an underclassman, his offensive game was far behind his athleticism and his defense. He made a really impressive strides this spring and hit well, showed a lot more power. And so he sort of elevated his prospect status with a strong spring and was seen quite frequently. But if you are a team that really wants to get a hitter you feel convicted in, I think Cunningham is the player. If you're a team who really values athleticism, secondary tools, and confidence in the shortstop profile, I think Pierce could be a guy that you maybe lean towards.
And we got one more question slid in right under the wire here. If the Orioles take a pitcher with either the 30 or 31st pick, what are some potential options there? We will start by saying, I like that if that you have there at the start, because that is something that the Orioles have not done in recent years. They don't take pitchers very high. But Carlos, if they did change that up, who would be some of the pitchers in that range who would be available?
Yeah, I think Adit has asked this question a number of times this spring. At least we've got a lot of questions. Maybe some Orioles fans want to know or really want some pitchers here. I would not bet on it for their track record, but guys who could make some sense on talent include Riley Quick at Alabama, Anthony Ianson, right-handed pitcher at LSU. I think Cruz Schoolcraft fits on talent in this range. Again, it's not a pitcher that I would associate with the Orioles, but he could go in this range, and the Orioles would have the pick capital and the bonus pool money to maybe slip him to 30, 31 ahead of some of the teams that I would more typically associate him with. Teams like the Royals, teams like the Padres. The Orioles could bully some teams in terms of the financial component, but I just haven't heard him really tied to them. Maybe a guy like AJ Russell at Tennessee could have some fastball traits that the Orioles like. He could fit there on talent. If Gage Wood is available, because there are questions about the medical and he doesn't go in the first round where he probably should go on talent, that would make a lot of sense as well if they really wanted to do a pitcher. But my assumption is it's going to be pretty hitter heavy like Baltimore typically does.
One other guy to keep an eye on if you're looking for a high school pitcher would be Angel Cervantes, who is young for the class. The Orioles definitely value that. High school pitcher from California with really good touch and feel for everything he's doing on the mound. Low to mid 90s fastball. There are guys who throw harder, which it sounds kind of like crazy to say about a high school pitcher. Well, it's pretty good velocity for a 17-year-old, but it's a really good change. One of the better changeups in the class. He's got feel to spin his breaking stuff too. Strike thrower. I really like him. I could see in him being a fit with one of those, teams that has multiple picks like the Orioles do.
So, by the way, I will also say, if you're asking about Orioles pitchers, I would recommend checking out baseballamerica.com. Top 100 prospects update. There is a pitcher who's just joined it. I won't go further than that, but just say it'll be well worth your time if you are an O's fan. And there'll be more on that new Top 100 prospect later this week. We do thank you for coming out. We thanks all the great questions we got today. We are, we love them. We love answering your questions. We'll keep steady on the draft, kind of keep giving you all the information we can as we get ready for the draft. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again next week.